afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the session. We're going to try and live up to the superstar image that he's built over the last session and this one. We do have a galaxy of speakers here, and we have a very, very interesting topic, which is leadership. We know this, that one person in the right place can make a world of difference, and that one person is the leader. So I'm sure everybody sitting in this panel will have a lot of hands-on tips to share with you, which you can take back and possibly use. To set the ball in motion, I just want to give you a very brief idea of what I think a leader should have, the characteristics that a new age 21st century leader should have. And to kind of put it succinctly, I call it the 3 I's. The first task of a leader, to my mind, is to inspire and influence. I say this because education is constantly changing. And you know this as practitioners, that the world has rapidly changed in the past 5-6 years in our field. Whether it is students' caliber, whether it is parents' mindset, or even teachers' resource, given the onset of technology. So as a leader, if you cannot inspire through a vision which touches everybody, and vision is not a paper statement. Vision is a line that you have to live and breathe. And that's where a leadership comes in. The leader needs to inspire everybody to live and breathe a vision. The second is innovation, and the third is integrity, which I will elaborate as we go along. But let me start from my right. We have Ryan, as all of you already have been introduced to him. He brings up a 4th generation, 2nd generation. 4th generation is here. Yes. My bad. 2nd generation. He's complaining, saying, I just got married, and you're already calling me 4th generation. So, sorry about that.
Excuse me, ma'am. One small interruption before we go ahead. One panelist that we're missing, Mr. S.P. Singh is here, a man of vision and big dreams. He is a founder manager of Lucknow Public Schools and Colleges. He has been a member of Legislative Council, Uttar Pradesh 2 times. His education agenda is that quality education is the birthright of every child. Right. So, ma'am, sir will speak after the session at the end for 5 minutes from the dais. Yes. I hope that's okay.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
So we have Ryan here. You've been introduced to him. Let's see what he has to say about New Age leadership.
Thank you. 2nd generation. 3rd is yet to come. I've told everybody back home and the team that please be patient for the 3rd. I think in terms of leadership, as you rightly pointed out, there are a number of traits that we all recognize are really important. For us as an organization, as a family, and me personally as an individual, I believe what Proverbs in the Bible says, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Wisdom is really required for skilled leadership. And fear of the Lord is basically, we are accountable, and we are responsible. And we are responsible for n number of things on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes some leaders may feel that they've made it at the top of the ladder, and they are no longer accountable to anybody. Maybe just the authorities, make sure that they're just in compliance. But I believe that we have to be wise, and we also have to have that self-realization that we are accountable to a higher power. And for us, that's God Almighty. And for me, I think that's really important. We constantly hear that leadership, leading from the front, being exemplary, being creative, innovative, inspiring, absolutely all required. I think one of the things that I discovered in the recent past is being a leader is you got to have it to take the hit. And many a times you will be leading teams and they are constantly looking up to you. There was a saying which goes that tiredness can be hidden behind the eyes, but pain can be only hidden with a brave smile. And so that for me was a big learning. that for us as leaders, that no matter what comes, we have to know what we stand for, know who we are, and to be that motivator to the larger team to say, we are here to work together, and for us to have, I think, the attitude of constantly being a learner, not having the attitude or that we've done it all, we know it all, and everybody just has to listen to us. We just give out instruction and people just follow rules and just obey. No, we are here as leaders to be a team player, to work and to learn from one another.
Thank you so much. On my left is Mr. Kamal Gupta. They work in multiple countries. So my question to you, Kamal, will be what kind of geographical challenges you have and how do you really overcome that? Because every country brings its own set of challenges, whether regulatory or otherwise. Even the environment is going to be different, the parent profile and expectation is going to be different. So how do you deal with that?
All right. So just to first of all give, mic is working? Hello?
Like this.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. So just to give you a very brief introduction about the organization, the Global Schools Foundation is a Singapore-based school education institution. We have 23 campuses in 7 different countries, including about 8 campuses in India as well. And I think if I go back to the question, what Pooja asked, it is really a very, very challenging aspect because we got campuses in Japan, we got campuses in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand, Vietnam, India, UAE. Now you can imagine the culture in UAE versus the culture in Vietnam or Thailand or the culture in Japan. In our Japan school, when I first time went to the Japan school and entered in the classroom, and I was thoroughly surprised. This is an Indian international school running the Indian curriculum, and 50% of students are Japanese. Now, those 50% of students coming, Japanese students coming into a KG or class 1, and you are trying to teach them in English, where their English knowledge of themselves as well as their parents is literally zero. And then you have a challenge that the other 50% are coming from either from the Indian community or other multinational community. And the moment you try to put focus on a Japanese student versus the other student, then the others are saying, well, why are you putting so much focus on these guys, whereas so you are neglecting us. So the challenge to create that balance, and obviously that requires incremental resources, additional resources to make it work for both, becomes a challenge which is very specific to a particular country. Now, similarly, from a regulatory environment point of view, when we go to, for example, in Singapore, where the government has a very clear agenda, a very, very clear agenda. They want to bring in the best-in-class education to the country. At the same time, their interference in how you run is absolutely zero again. They just don't interfere at all. They want to bring the right institutions, the best-in-class institutions, and they have a quality program, but what fees you charge, what incremental fee increase you take every year is completely left to you, and how you run the institution is also completely run to you. Now, compared to that, you come to UAE, where everything is extremely regulated. First of all, whether you come in or not, it takes years and years to get permission. And then even if you get permission, what fees you will charge is regulated, what increase you will take is regulated, the inspectors will come every year, and almost, I've spoken to a number of schools in UAE, almost like 2 months of the teaching time, a lot of teachers' time is wasted because everybody is just preparing for getting the right rating from the regulatory authorities. So these are the different challenges. So you have, as leadership, what we always try to do is to make sure that the right resources are there on ground, and we try to create that balance in terms of what we want to drive. Of course, the agenda is what we want to drive, the kind of curriculum we want to establish, the program we want to establish. That is absolutely most critical.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you so much for those insights. My next speaker is Roshan Gandhi. Some of you may not know this, but their family owns the largest school, as I was saying, on this planet, in terms of numbers of students. In the last session, I introduced him as a new kid on the block because he's He's really one of the youngest people that's going to take the family philosophy forward. And he is a strategist. So let's hear in terms of how do you manage such diversity when you have a large number of students? And since it's so many generations old, what kind of strategy keeps you alive and kicking, Roshan?
Sure. Thank you. So, I mean, when I was looking at the sort of concept note for this topic, for this panel this morning, there was one word which stuck out to me a lot. It was saying, you know, can we give our insights on how business leaders should help their organizations grow? And that word business kind of stuck out to me a little bit, because I feel that in the school context, if we think in terms of business, we will end up going a little bit wrong in terms of our leadership and our strategy. Because the school business is very different from any other kind of business. I mean, would you imagine seeing the CEOs of Google and Microsoft and Apple sitting on one panel and collaborating and talking together and sharing ideas? I doubt it, because they are fundamentally focusing on competition with one another. Whereas as business leaders in the school context, we like to learn from each other, and I think we focus on the idea of being constant lifelong learners, where there's always new ways to innovate, new things to do. Education is an infinitely large field, and as leaders we have to bear that in mind and work that way. And when it comes to making strategic decisions within that context, it's very helpful to have a sort of framework in mind for decision making within the vision. So you have your overall vision, of course, and you stick to that vision relentlessly. But within that vision, when you're making day-to-day decisions, when you're dealing with things which seem so far removed from what's actually happening to the kid in the classroom, when you're dealing with, you know, legal compliance or a glitch in your ERP system or whatever it might be, you maintain a framework which could be something very simple. Like, does this ultimately lead to the benefit of any child or not? But you have that thought in mind throughout the day, whatever you're doing, and that helps you a lot when it comes to making strategic decisions. And similarly, when you're thinking about that framework, you might think of how to link that framework with your overall vision. You might come up with a little mantra which you're going to share with all your people that you're leading, all your teams. You know, my personal mantra is, when the framework that we think about when doing anything is access to quality. So every decision we make is either about improving the quality of the education or about increasing the access of the quality education that we provide, so that more and more people can have a chance to access the quality education that we're trying to strive for. And when we think in those terms, then, you know, the strategy kind of develops itself. The school automatically grows, because parents and people and children are attracted to schools and school leadership, which is focusing relentlessly on quality and which has that kind of framework in mind when it's making its decisions. If we were trying to compete in a very direct way for admissions, for example, that would be a parallel to literal business sector, I think things would be very different. But when we do compete, I think we compete in a very different way. We prioritize our competition on the supply side. We compete for making better infrastructure. We compete for trying to hire better teachers. I think we can probably see that. So we're not trying, you know, we're not developing marketing strategies where we think, okay, Ryan's school is trying to get that portion of the market, and we have to try to think about how to absorb that portion of the market before they get there first. No, that's not our attitude. Our attitude is simply, let's try to provide the best quality we can, and people will follow that way. So I think when it comes to thinking about overall leadership strategy in the school sector, that is the mode of thinking that we ought to be in.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have the fourth generation guy, Raghav Podar. So Raghav, does the Podar surname bring about a lot of expectations? Is that like a weight on your head that you have to fulfill? Because there are so many generations, there are so many people with diverse backgrounds. So you're this young person who will come into leadership positions, but there are much older people, more established in the organization. who may or may not accept you as a leader, even if you're a family person. How do you deal with challenges like that?
To start with, yes, we do have a lot of expectations with the Podar name, but that's also the advantage of having a brand. If you have a brand, people have expectations of what they expect from that school, which is a very good thing because it keeps everyone on their toes as well. In terms of people who have been established with the group for a long time and them accepting younger blood, I'm glad you still think I'm younger blood, although I've been doing this since more than 10 years now. But it was a challenge initially, but what is leadership? Leadership is not a position. Leadership is not a surname. If I'm Raghav Podar, that doesn't mean I'm a leader. Leadership is action. You're going to be judged by your actions. You're going to be judged. You cannot change the world by your opinion. You change your world by example. So if you actually live it and breathe it, that is really what leadership is. So if you can actually demonstrate that action, that is what gets the flow from the older generation to the younger generation in a much smoother sort of way. That's point one. Second point is, you spoke about the 3 I's of leadership. I want to speak about the 3 P's. P for passion, persistence, and persuasion. These are my 3 P's for leadership. The most important thing, I think, is to have passion. You have to be passionate at what you want to do. And that passion, hopefully, should not be profit. It should be making a difference in the lives of the children. While we were introduced as superstars and all of that, very kind of the compare to say that, but the superstars are you. The ones who are there in the classrooms, your teachers, they are the superstars. They are the ones who are making the differences in the lives of the children. So, they have to have passion. The biggest thing that we look for when we are looking for new teachers, when we are looking to recruit the best talent, is even if the content mastery is a little bit less, that's okay, as long as the person has passion. If they are passionate about teaching, passionate about learning, passionate about making a difference in the classroom, that is what has got Podar the name that it has. So passion is my biggest mantra for leadership. Is persistence and I'm not going to persist with that, Mike. Persistence, like Ryan said, yes, you take a hit, but you need to keep going at what you think is right. If your vision is right, if your heart is in the right place, you're doing the right things. No matter you're gonna get hit badly many times, but that's life. If you want to make a difference, you continue doing what is true to yourself, and the people will respect you for that in the longer run, whatever the short run turbulences may come. So persistence and persuasion. You need to be able to persuade. And by persuade, I'm not talking about persuasion of the parents or persuasion of children. Persuasion of your own teams. If you want to get a vision achieved, you need to be able to persuade your own team to have ownership, to be a part of your plan. So that persuasion is extremely important. So persistence, passion, and persuasion are my 3 Ps. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Raghav. Very well said. We already saw the presentation of Acer. We saw the cutting-edge technology that they're bringing into classroom. Let's see how EdTech is making a difference. Sudhir, Goel.
Thanks, Pooja. I think I'm the odd man out, sitting amongst the distinguished educationists, the people who actually impart the education and ensure that our children are ready for the future. We covered a lot of topics, a lot of ideas about what the leadership is all about. So let me give a different perspective, an industry perspective. But I still feel that maybe some of these ideas may be common because ultimately an educational institution is also an organization, right? So first of all, I think we talked about changes in the morning. So we know that the product, technology, consumer behavior, work ethics, people, everything is changing and changing very fast for the last 10 years. That's the reality. Digital transformation or digital revolution has resulted into a connected world. So today, all of us are connected. We can see the global transformations. And that has resulted into a difference in the aspirational value of everyone, whether it's a child, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a principal, whether it's an industry worker or leader, everyone. So these are the changes which are happening in the world. As a leader, it is important for us to manage these changes. My perspective, of course, all those qualities which was mentioned by my earlier panelists are all valid. So I would like to give different views. The first is, I think, as a leader, I must enjoy this change. Change, whether I like it, this may be against what I was taught, but unless I enjoy the change, I will never be able to manage the change. This is going to be a challenge, right? As the age grows, I mean, we have so many youngsters, I'm not of that league, but I know how rigid we become. But as a leader, we are trained to manage the change, and if we don't enjoy the change, we'll never be able to manage. The second perspective is that in today's world, it's a speed, right? You have the cars, mobiles, everything is so fast. If it is so fast, the expectation of students, teachers, workers, everything is there should be a fast decision making. Any issue, any problem which comes up in the business, in the school, raised by anyone, as a leader, we are the decision makers. The turnaround time for the decision is expected to be much faster. That's what the new generation is looking for. The third, I mean, we will have generations, difference of opinions of the way that things are going to do, and I think the only way to manage this change with a younger generation, whether in the workplace or in a school, is to connect. You have to connect with the children. You have to connect with your teams, you have to connect with the children, and the best way is to communicate. More we communicate, as we say in the industry, if we have an objective, there's no harm in communicating the objective to the team members, saying this is the objective, this is the thought process, and I think with a connect and a proper communication, we should be able to manage and get the support from our team members to manage those changes. So as a leader, my perspective is, in the new world, we have to make sure that the faster decision making, communication, connection with the team members, and enjoying the change are mandatory for us to manage the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I have Vijay Shukla from Indus Schools. I did tell you why this panel is very special. Let me tell you that the combined strength of schools on this panel alone will probably surplus 200 schools. And that's the way you should actually look at the speakers, because they bring in a wealth of information and experience. Ryan here alone handles 135 schools. Raghav? 105. What did I say, 150? I have to make it 300 already. So that's the combined strength of this panel. No kidding. It's very difficult to pack in 1 hour such dynamism. So Indus is a very well-recognized brand, primarily in South India?
Central and North India, yeah.
Central and Northern India. So let's see, you also have international schools?
Yes, ma'am.
So my question to you will be, is international schools and national schools, in terms of leadership management, very different?
Well, yeah, it's actually maybe a little bit of background. I've been hearing, I's and P's, very, very well covered, about the leadership aspects. And, one of the disadvantages of starting late is that most of the relevant matter is covered by eminent speakers. However, I'd just like to add, with your permission, ma'am, my view on leadership, and particularly in the context of setting up and running schools. So I am like not even 1G, half G school person. Last 10 years I've been involved in setting up and running schools, and prior to that, I've been in the space of technology, and always, since my childhood, it intrigued me that, India, as we say, that, is a land of contradictions. So a lot of people would say Indian education system is very good, But a bigger number would say that it's actually bad, it sucks, particularly schools. So I really wanted to make a difference and see that what is it that can be done for us, all of us together. We keep saying about education system, but I believe that we are the education system. For all of us, which is the education system, what is it that needs to be done, especially from leadership perspective, to make a big difference? And when I say big difference, it is not just good quality schools in a few locations, which are primarily, unfortunately, large cities, but also look at education, quality of education from the perspective of spreading across the nation. We have 30 crores, which is almost like the population of the US. 30 crore students, waking up every morning and going to schools. It is in its world's largest schooling system. But when we have very little to talk about when we talk about quality, and of course, leadership has to be also questioned, from a policy standpoint and from a practice standpoint. Specifically, in terms of what is it that one really needs about leadership, there are two things. There are various things, of course, many covered by esteemed panelists, but two things in my view. One is, very, very deep understanding of today and of tomorrow. The way things are, with technology we touched upon, the way things are changing. Our children, any child who's enrolling in grade 1 or kindergarten today is going to retire in 2070. Many of us don't even have an idea of what's going to happen in 2019 elections. We are trying to prepare our children, some children who will retire in 2070. So it's little bit of a challenge. So the ability that the school leader needs to have is the ability of playing very good gilli danda. If you know about this very rural North Indian sport, where you have to have one eye on immediate term. So you can't be saying that I'm just dreamer, I think 20 years, 30 years. So you need to have a very, very good understanding of today, as well as maybe a mile away, where your gilli really goes. So this understanding is very, very crucial. Along with it, given the demanding scenario of education, everybody you meet is an expert in education, especially school education. Everybody has a point of view. You want to do more. People say that doing more is not all right. Some people will say doing less is not all right. Some people say STEM is the future. Some people will say don't leave humanities behind, and so on. Some people say vernacular medium is the language to go. Some may say English is the language of the future. So what does all this mean? For a leader, that one has to have very, very important elements of courage and conviction. So you listen to everybody, but you need to have very significant amounts of courage and conviction and commitment. That makes it 3 C's, incidentally. But it's very important to just say that this is my philosophy, this is my position. I'm not going to change the world. I'm not going to change the country. I'm just going to change the students who are who are studying in my school. Given this, the challenge, just last bit, ma'am, the challenge of very, very limited time that we have, not just for this discussion purpose, but also if you look at the entire school, we think of school as 12, 13 years of significant amount of time that we have working with the children. But if you look at it in a granular way, most schools in India and also abroad, end up spending, in terms of instruction time, teacher to student time, about 8 to 9 lakh minutes. And considering we've sort of spent about 200 minutes already, since the time the session was inaugurated. 8 to 9. I mean, if you are a very, very hard-working school and you say no, we are longer number of hours, larger number of days. We don't do 200 days. We want to do 250 days, 230 days, or whatever. It's hard to cross 1 million minutes. And 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I mean, time just goes by, and so much you have to do in on working on a child. We want to make children great human beings. We want to have great successful professionals. Engineers, doctors, architects, and so on. Responsible citizens, impart them good values, skills, knowledge, all of it. So the long and short of it is there is very little time. If we want to do a regular school, of course, there's no problem. But if we want to do a great job, 8 lakh to 9 lakh minutes or maybe up to 1 million minutes is actually a very, very small period of time. So my view in terms of how we can make a difference, particularly from international schools, and we need to learn from some of the very successful schools globally, is how to use technology to improve. We can't possibly, given the structure and scenario and political and policy systems, we possibly can't increase 1 million minutes to 1.5 million minutes. But what we can do is to use technology to prepare for every class, use technology in the class, and use technology after the class in order to have enriched education and good quality education to be able to achieve our goals. So in summary, it's the technology which is the key, and also naturally coupled with the courage and commitment of leaders. And leader is not necessarily the head of the school. Every teacher is a leader in his or her own right, really. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vijay. So that's 3 I's, 3 P's, and 3 C's by now. We still have A through Z, so maybe the other speakers can bring that up. On my right is Mr. S.P. Singh, Lucknow Public Schools, where every child matters.
Every child matters. This is the, on this topic I have to speak leadership. As my previous speaker told, that everybody is leader. Every teacher is leader, and we are committed to remove ignorance through the weapon of education. And education makes a man capable to choose the right path. So it is the prime duty of every teacher, every leader, every Indian to enhance the education in all the sects. We are providing only 10% students. We are elite schools. But 90% students, they live in villages. They need proper education. अभी नागालैंड के जो हमारे मंत्री जी थे, आप सब लोग थे, उन्होंने ये बात कही थी, बहुत अच्छी लगी मुझे, कि उनके लिए आप लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, उनके लिए क्या सोच रहे हैं। हम बहुत अच्छा दे रहे हैं एक लिमिटेड लोगों के लिए। इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन देखिए, तो हर एक का राइट है अच्छी एजुकेशन पाने का। और अगर हम अच्छे स्कूल एक लीडर होने के नाते बड़े बड़े शहरों में खोल रहे हैं, तो चैरिटी के नाते हमें रूरल एरियाज़ में भी खोलना चाहिए। एक बहुत बड़ी बात है, इसको कोई नहीं करता है। हम सैकड़ों स्कूल बना लेंगे, लेकिन रूरल एरियाज़ में कितने खोले। हमने 7 स्कूल्स स्थापित किए शहरों में, तो 3 रूरल एरियाज़ में खोले, बहुत कम एफोर्डेबल फीस पे, जिससे कि वहाँ के बच्चों का भी स्तर बढ़े। और हम देख रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा रिजल्ट भी आ रहा है। रूरल एरियाज़ में बहुत कम फीस पे उनका जो खर्चा हम शहर के स्कूलों से मीट आउट करते हैं, और वहाँ के बच्चे IAS बन रहे हैं, इंजीनियरिंग में सेलेक्ट हो रहे हैं, IIT में सेलेक्ट हो रहे हैं, CPMT में सेलेक्ट हो रहे हैं, हर कंपटीशन में सेलेक्ट हो रहे हैं, क्योंकि प्रतिभाएं हर जगह। तो हम सब लोगों को इस पर भी सोचना पड़ेगा, तभी जो है हम सच्चे लीडर होंगे, सच्चे देशभक्त होंगे, देश के लिए कुछ कर सकेंगे। तो ये एक प्राइम ड्यूटी समझना चाहिए हम एजुकेशनिस्ट्स को, कि हम उन क्षेत्रों में भी जाएं और वहाँ भी स्कूल खोलें, तो मैं समझता हूँ देश का बहुत भला होगा। कहते हैं कि अगर हर व्यक्ति अपने दरवाजे का कूड़ा उठा ले तो पूरा शहर एक साथ साफ हो जाएगा। हम अगर अपने आसपास पड़ोस के हर बच्चे को देख लें, उसे पढ़ा दें, तो हमारे देश में भी 100% लिटरेसी हो जाएगी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
बिल्कुल सही बात है आपकी। इंडिया डजंट लिव इन अर्बन सिटीज़, इंडिया लिव्स इन रूरल इंडिया। ये जो हम यहाँ पे रिप्रेजेंटेशन है, दिस इज़ अबाउट possibly slightly higher because 42% of school-going children go to private education. But the fact of the matter is that the rural India, the hilly areas where access to education is very, very poor, I guess people like us have to take active responsibility for that. So thank you for bringing up that point. The last speaker on the panel today is Kanak Gupta, Jaipuria Schools. Let's see what you have to say about leadership.
So now I actually understand what Ishan Sharma must be going through when there's a very decorated panel going as the last speaker, and you know the Dhonis and the Virat Kohlis have batted, and then no one has any expectation from Ishan Sharma to score runs at the right at the end. Was that? He takes wickets. Sandeep, thank you so much for actually inviting me as Mr. Kanak Gupta. For the last 2 conferences, this gentleman has been calling me Miss Kanak Gupta for some weird reason. So, but third time is the charm, Sandeep. Third time is the charm. But thank you so much for remembering this time around. Right, so, you know, we've been running schools for the last 70 years, and, you know, we have about 21 schools and 25,000 students, and we are in tier 2, tier 3 cities, as Singh Saab was saying, that, you know, where the access to education is very, very important. That's where we are going, and we are going to the smaller cities of the country. And I genuinely believe that this is where education is most required. We try to create leaders at ground levels everywhere we go. I think that is very important. I think Raghav spoke about the passion element. I also strongly believe in passion. I think passion is the overriding factor. I also believe a lot in processes. Leaders have to be process-driven. I also believe that leaders have to be patient with whatever processes that they create. We have to be patient at our schools. And most importantly, I think passion being an overriding thing, unless we empower our people, teachers have to be empowered. Teachers have to be constantly given that understanding that yes, there is a requirement to learn more, to change. Today we are looking at, for instance, you know, Apple is a $1 trillion company today. When I was in school, Apple was this fancy company which geeks used. Today, Amazon is an $850 billion company. When I was in college, Amazon did not exist. But today, these companies exist. And our kids who are studying at schools would be working at companies like these, or they would be creating companies such as these. I don't think that we can be ready with solutions right away. However, we can prepare our children for critical thinking, for analytical skills. I think that's very important, for decision-making skills. And that is what we need to do in our schools. And as leaders, it is our responsibility to create systems, to create processes that enable critical thinking. And we don't need to look outside. We don't need to go anywhere. You know, I think I was speaking at a conference last week, and this is exactly what I said, that we, as a society, as a country, we failed when we started thinking that we are a 70-year-old country. We are not. We are a very rich civilization of 5,000 years plus. The moment we understand, the moment as we as educators start believing this, that everything, you know, we talk about learning by doing, we talk about activity-based learning, we talk about flipped learning, and all these fancy terms. We've been doing it for centuries. We just need to look back at ourselves and bring that back to classroom. And as leaders, this is what we need to do.
Perfect. Before I throw it out to the audience for Q&A, Mr. Singh brought in this diversity of India about rural and urban. Kanak just brought in the fact that India is rooted in 5,000 years. So why are we aping or following just the West? When we talk about global and local learning, we have to bring in the fact that India itself, the Vedic tradition itself, has so much to offer. For those of you who are here in the evening, you're going to be going through a demonstration of some students here who are exceptionally gifted. So the diversity is between rural, urban, local, global, gifted and special. I think education has to expand to encompass everything. We have some students from a special ashram, from a Gurukul in Bangalore, Nityananda Ashram. Can I have the students stand up there, please? These students are exceptionally gifted. They will be demonstrating some powers to you in the evening sessions. But those of you who are not there in the evening, I encourage you to chat with them in the breaks and find out all about the way they magically see the world. Thank you. The idea here, the idea that I'm actually saying is education is not restrictive. Education is expansive. Education has to encompass every challenge. Tomorrow, when kids are going to be robotic or going to be challenged by robots, it is education that has to bring them to that speed of capability. And that's going to happen in our classrooms. With that said, you have a galaxy of speakers. Please choose your speaker and ask your question, Q&A. Let's keep it brief, maybe 2-3 questions. How are we doing on time? 2-3 questions I can take? Oh, thank you very much. Can we get a mic, please?
We have additional mics there if you want.
My question is to Roshan Gandhi. It's not a question. I would like Roshan Gandhi to share. City Montessori School, I was in one of the principals' meet over there, and I was also awarded the Innovation in Process Fellowship, and I'm highly inspired by Dr. Gandhi and your family. I would like you to share how are you bridging the East and the West, or we can say Western education deep-seated in the Indian roots. Please share, and I think we should take this message from the Gandhians to our schools. I have experienced it. I want each one of us to experience so that the ethical, the cultural values of India, which is losing its space in the school system, can be once again invited and deep-seated. Yes, sir.
Good, well, I assume you directed this question at me because I'm the one with the British accent, but despite that, I'm a... But I'm a proud Indian nonetheless.
No.
And bridging the gap, that's a very good way of putting it. See, as I said earlier, being educational leaders is all about learning. And just as we can learn from the West can learn from us. So we have to respect our long-standing cultural traditions. And we cannot imagine in any sector, in any, whether it's business or healthcare or government, you cannot just try to copy a successful thing from somewhere else and bring it somewhere else. It doesn't work because the cultural values of a particular place are different. Now, what I would say from exposure to the West, as we call it, I mean, a lot of the discourse that is happening these days in education about what's at the cutting edge is being referred to as the fourth education revolution. And the fourth education revolution is all about, technology in education, artificial intelligence in education, and all of that. But if we think about the first three revolutions, why is this the fourth? So the first was thousands of years ago when some kind of formal education system came into place in the first place. Then the second is a couple of hundred years ago when we're talking about like the industrial revolution and the kind of systematization of education. The third is when, sort of post the Second World War, when education became much less about kind of having factory farming children and getting them to learn and memorize things and preparing them for industrial jobs, but more about developing the wider skills, the creativity, the thinking of children. And the problem is that now that we're talking about the fourth in the West, that in some ways, I hope it's not too controversial for me to say this, that on average, a lot of India has not yet caught up with the third in the way that much of the West has. And that is why I would say that there's perhaps more learning to be had in the West to East direction than the east to west direction at the present time. And so when it comes to bridging the gap, it's about trying to make those ideas context specific. It's about understanding the realities and the challenges on the ground in a place like India, and making sure that people like me don't come in from the West and start imposing particular ideas in a particular way. So those ideas that come with the third education revolution have to be adapted and reformed and made very context specific, considering the realities of the culture and the people and the desires on the ground, and even the economic realities of the place. Ultimately, you can't do that when you've got billions of people to get through. You know, you have to find some balance in the between. So it's about finding a healthy balance between what so-called revolutions have already happened and what needs to happen here, and how to make it culturally, contextually viable.
Thank you, Roshan. There was a lady okay.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Gaurav. I am from Chrysalis. My question is to Kamalji. Since we are talking about leader and leadership, how do you make sure as a leader, when you have a vision, that vision is passed on to the last person of the organization, or for that matter, to our schools, to everybody around us? How do you make sure that vision of that leadership is passed on?
I think I would say that first of all, the vision has to be shared. And there is one aspect of the leadership, you know, we all of us talked about the 3 I's, the P's and C's. There is one aspect of leadership which I wanted to put it here is the team. Is the both creating a team, building a team and sharing a team. And that is one thing which in my own experience in the last 4 or 5 years in education industry, I have tried to do is that the vision comes from the top, but the vision has to be shared, and then it has to be built down the line. And you know, there was a comment made here that the most important aspect of that vision sharing is the teachers. In my view, and this is what I've seen over the last 4 years, you know, I come from, in fact, I actually come from the fast-moving consumer goods industry, and my education background has been only 4 years, but it's been life-changing for me. But one of the jobs I have seen and it felt myself is the most difficult job is that of a teacher. Because what a teacher puts in, we actually don't even recognize it that well, we don't appreciate it that well, and we don't really give value to it that well. And that's what we need to do in order to bring that. So the vision is, when we are creating that vision, whether it is technology or whether it is creativity and passion, you know, that's where the team has to come in. And if it goes down the line like a pyramid, that's where the change will happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kamal. One last question, please.
Yeah, hello. My question is to all of you. My name is Bharti Bhatnagar. Okay, now you people are talking about robotics. You people are talking about digital learning.
Can you hold the mic closer to you?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, can you hear me now? See, as a founder president of an NGO, you know, we are still struggling with inculcating basics in our children for the underprivileged section. Okay, now how will this help this wide gap be bridged? You know, and who will bridge this gap? This question is to all of you.
Who wants to take an RT-related question? Go ahead.
You want me to repeat the question?
You've heard the question, right?
So I think fantastic question. Now you've heard of Saugata Mitra's hole-in-the-wall experiment. I think we all have. In case someone has not, what he did was he placed a computer absolutely unguided and went away, and like kids came and they figured out how to use it in 2 days, right? So it's not always the like very expensive resources required. I think there needs to be constant teaching, grooming of ourselves to sort of bring into the classroom innovation in a big way. I think, you know, I was trying to resist this, but the most popular joke is that, you know, when you have people, you train them and they leave, well, the bigger fear is, what if you don't train them and they stay? So instead of thinking about, you know, how to make it happen at lesser resources, I think what we are absolutely committed to is collaboration and making sure that there is a cross-learning happening between schools. We run schools in very small cities, and what we've done is that there are schools for the underprivileged, there are government schools. So what we do is, as a private school, we tie up with these schools, and it's a two-way street, right? Because we understand that there is a lot of passion, there is a lot of learning, wisdom that is there at both corners, and that is how we try to make sure that all kids have access to the latest technologies, latest resources. I think you could try and experiment that with your schools as well.
Can we have last question, please? Last question here.
Sir, I may allow 100 questions more. This session will never get over because this is such a wonderful session.
Yeah, it's happening very well. So I am Dr.
I will have to depend on him to answer that.
Last question.
Last question, sir.
Okay.
Short and crisp. It has to be a question and not a statement,
It's
please.
a small addition, Okay. Good afternoon, all of you. Thanks for considering. I'm Dr. E. Prasad Rao, Chairman, Paramita Group of Schools, Karimnagar, Telangana. And we're from the south, from the three-tiered city, actually. So there's a lot of inputs from all of you. Thank you so much for that. But I think leadership is over-jargonized and less practiced in schools. What I feel is we talk about mind mingling, mingling of minds, and a lot of other things. But I think one thing that is hugely missing in schools, maybe international or government or private, whatever, schools, is the emotional connect. Emotional connect of the people to the leadership issue itself, and to the kids, the kids and the teachers. If the leaders actually, if they go beyond the books, beyond the practices, they enroll themselves into a sort of a beautiful synergetic energy connect, I think that will take care of the organizations, the institutions, the kids, their learning, and all people should be able to work from the single platform with one intent. With one intent, I think there the success rate will be all the more higher. So I think we need to stress more on that emotional connect in the organization, where it leads to a lot of synergy. This is my submission to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Do we have a question, sir, or a statement?
If
it is a question, I'll allow it. If it is a statement, I'm sorry. Okay, can we have a mic for the gentleman, please? This is the last question. I know we'll all connect offline. I have a lot of questions, then myself to ask them. Right, sir, please.
Yes, I am also coming from remote area, rural area, and whatever he has raised his voice in favor of remote and rural area, I am supporting him with these words, that it is not possible to open schools in rural area to have land and have a strong infrastructure. Why should not you people adopt some schools from rural area along with this city area, developed area? So if you will adopt, आप अगर उसे अंगीभूत करते हो, आप अगर उसे adopt करते हो, तो वो अपने आप में एक मिसाल होगा, एक मैसेज जाएगा, और इस तरह से जो है हमारा भारत जो है, हमारा देश जो है, वो वास्तव में बहुत आगे बढ़ेगा और जो चाहिए सो होगा, यही कहेंगे। और उसके साथ फीमेल एम्पावरमेंट रूरल एरिया में बच्चियों को पढ़ाना भी एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। बच्चों के साथ बच्चियों को पढ़ाना भी एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। इस पे भी थोड़ा आप ध्यान दीजिए, as because you are leaders and policy makers. सरकार को
wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
I'm going to take that one.
Absolutely.
जो आपने कहा, आपने बहुत सही कहा. My Hindi is not that great, but maybe I can reply in Marathi, but maybe you won't understand. As you said, sir, that it is difficult to open up in rural schools, but it is not impossible. And the reason I'm saying that it's not impossible is because that's how we started, and that's how we are continuing to build some of our schools. For us as an organization, we are not 100 plus, not even a 50 plus year organization. We are just 40 years from 76. Our beginning was very, very humble. our chairman and MD, our teachers, they didn't come from a generation of very wealthy families. They, in fact, were very normal teachers, and some teachers are here in the audience. For them, it was their determination and it was their belief that they decided that it was their calling. And that's how they started with a very humble beginning. They literally sold everything that they had and invested, and they took a big risk, and they started the first school, and that's how we've grown. Maybe you're looking at us now, but this is the fruits of the last 40 years that are coming forth. And I can tell you, even today, we are still opening schools in not even 3-tier cities or small towns. We have schools, maybe you will know, in Durg, Damtari, Jabalpur, where even today there are no airports, there are no train stations, and we are able to build those schools. It's not impossible, but I think we need to have the passion, we need to have the determination, and I think we all need to be risk takers, and we need to take that sacrifice.
And I completely agree with Ryan. Just to take on from there, you don't have 150, 200 schools all in urban centers. They are all rural. Well, most of them are rural. Podar schools, we have schools in the smallest of smallest places, Madhubani, Ankleshwar, Bharuch. These are places that definitely we want to do that. But that's not necessarily directed to the people on this panel, I don't think.
Just to add, sir, on records, last year, some of us had made a representation to the government of India saying, please allow us, each school, exactly what you are saying, this is 2017, please allow all of us to adopt, every school to adopt one school in a neighborhood area, which could be urban-rural area. In India, India is a very strange country. In big cities, also there are rural areas, which are, underdeveloped areas, which is easy for us to do. So that proposal is under consideration at the Ministry of Human Resource Development, sir.
Shall we wrap up? Thank you to ELETS for bringing us here year after year, sometimes every 3 months.
We're going to have a shorter duration of time, ma'am.
And to everyone,
I promise.
And to everyone in the panel, thank you for your valuable inputs and for sharing your time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the audience for being so wonderful and for all the sharings and interactions.